Hello all, welcome to our first module for the wonderful Descartes. Descartes is a French philosopher who was writing in the 1700s?
No,
1800s?
16 I think.
1600s, let's say. And he's most famous for the saying, I think, therefore I am.
Or in Latin,
Yes?
what is it?
I have no idea.
Fail. It's cogito ergo sum, obviously.
Cool story. And that is not, however, part of our text.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Clearly
it
you
is.
haven't read it.
So let's go on this wonderful journey together then.
Now, oh yes, we need to prepare you for the structure of the text that you're about to read. So we are reading two meditations. Descartes wrote these things called meditations, which will become clear what that means. So we're reading the first meditation and the second meditation. Obviously we'll start with the first. The first is all about what can be called into doubt. In other words, what do we not know? He's talking about what we cannot trust in this one. So the first one, he actually ends the first meditation by going into what is called radical doubt. Do you know what that means?
Oh.
What does radical mean?
Extreme, intense.
Exactly. So he goes into extreme doubt, which means he doubts everything. He doesn't believe anything really about the world or about himself. And then in the second meditation, that's when he tries. So he's kind of like demolished everything, and the second meditation is when he tries to build it back up.
Yes. Yeah. I really like that part.
Cool. Yeah. So we'll start with the first meditation. So here's Descartes. I thought I'd put this picture in because this is how I always imagine Descartes when I read the first and second meditations, right? He's just sitting by the fire, having a chilled time, kind of devoting his time to figuring out what's real and what's not. So that's how I kind of want you to be thinking of Descartes throughout this text. Alright, so let's begin Descartes' meditation. Before we start this slide, I just wanted to talk about this word which you can find in the first paragraph, edifice. What does that mean?
Well, I've always pronounced it edifice.
Oh, okay, sorry, I might be wrong.
No, you're probably not. And I think he's talking along the lines of the structure, or the construct, the whole what you've put together upon certain foundations.
Well, yeah, okay, so isn't an edifice or an edifice something that you build on top of something else?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a big building.
Yeah.
That's how I always think of it. Okay, cool. So now that we understand that, we're going to understand this paragraph.
Yes.
So some years ago, I was struck by the large number of falsehoods that I had accepted as true in my childhood. So let me ask you, Tim, I'm going to ask you to reflect back to when you were a child.
So long ago.
I know. What was one thing that you thought was absolutely true?
Something like that my parents never lied.
So you trusted your parents completely as a child?
Yeah.
Okay, so was there ever a moment when you realised that was wrong?
I guess like when you find out things like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny aren't real.
Oh, that's very sad.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so what you're saying is there was a falsehood that you believed, that you accepted as true in your childhood. What was that falsehood?
That my parents never lie.
Yeah, okay. And so based on the fact that you accepted that your parents never lied, what was the edifice that you built on that?
I don't know, I guess like a belief in and myths and traditions around these like mythical beings like Santa Claus and leaving out the cookies and the milk. And
So the falsehood was your parents never lied. And you've subsequently based this whole edifice of beliefs on that one falsehood.
Yes.
So Descartes kind of going through that same process. He's saying, as a child, I believed all these things that actually weren't true, and I built all these other beliefs on top of that.
Yeah.
And now I've realised that those beliefs may not be true.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what does he say next? Do you want to read it?
I realised that it was necessary, once in the course of my life, to demolish everything completely and start again right from the foundations if I wanted to establish anything at all in the sciences that was stable and likely to last.
So what does he want to do here?
He wants to really go to the heart and of his beliefs and his knowledge and his understanding, and he wants to do that by removing everything that he does now know and he does now believe, so that he can go to the core.
Yeah, so the word demolish means like get rid of.
Yeah.
Like demolishing a house.
Yeah.
So he's realised that he actually has believed all these false things.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of freaking out. He's like, well, I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
So he wants to demolish everything. He's not going to believe anything.
Yeah.
So that he can start working out what's actually true.
Exactly. Cool. So basically what this slide is talking about is the kind of approach and the thoughts he's going to be having while he's sitting in that chair by the fire. And so if we read this, so today I've expressly rid my mind of all worries and arranged for myself a clear stretch of 3 time. That's quite a lovely thought. It's the idea that he's sitting there in his chair, he's gotten rid of all the mundane kind of things he'd have to do in his life, like organising food or paying bills, and he's given himself some actual free time to stop and think. I'm here quite alone. Miss Fitz has made a typo here. It should be, I'm here quite alone. And at last I will devote myself sincerely and without reservation to the general demolition of my opinions. So that's what he's going to actually do with that 3 time he now has.
I just love Descartes here, don't you? Like, he's just such a cool dude. He just kind of gets himself a free day to demolish everything he believes. Who does that?
Well, today I would think like bums.
That's very offensive to one of the greatest philosophers of all time.
Sorry, Descartes.
So Descartes is sitting by the fire, probably in his dressing gown, and he's going to devote his time to the demolition of his opinions. But he's a bit stressed by this because we have a lot of opinions. We have a lot of things we believe. How long do you think it would take to demolish every single belief you have?
Years.
Yeah, probably the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So he's like, he says, it will not be necessary for me to show that all my opinions are false. He's not going to go through them all one by one. He could never manage that. So instead of going through all of his beliefs one by one, he's going to go straight for the foundations. So you know how we talked about the edifice before?
Yeah.
What's the edifice built on?
Your foundations.
Yeah, very good. So he's going to say, what are the fundamental beliefs that I have? What is everything else based on? If I can demolish those beliefs, then the rest will collapse. It's just like a building. So imagine this building here on this slide. If it's got foundations below the ground. This is just showing what's above the ground. If you get rid of the foundations, the whole building will collapse.
That's a bit depressing.
So Descartes wants to figure out what are the foundations of all his beliefs, and he calls those the basic principles on which all our beliefs rest. So where do we get our beliefs? What are the basic principles on which all our other beliefs rest? Where do we get our information?
Well, based on this slide, I feel it's our senses. So what we encounter and come across, and how we encounter them through our senses. So we see something or we touch something.
So what would be an example of a belief that you get through your senses?
Knowing whether something looks attractive or not.
Yeah, very strange example to use, but yes.
Like, I'm just looking at a lovely chair right now.
Okay.
And I know that that's a lovely chair because I can see its features.
So the proposition might be that chair is attractive.
Yes.
And you get that information through your senses. Another one might be like the sky is blue.
Ah, yes, that's a better example.
Or this cushion feels soft.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, and I thought you'd enjoy this delightfully creepy diagram of all the senses, right? So we've got 5 senses. That's where we get our information.
Good job.
But we don't get all our beliefs through the senses. What's another basic principle from which we get our beliefs?
Say my belief that, I don't know, God exists.
Okay.
And I get that by thinking about the question of whether God exists.
Yes. Okay.
And it's not something I can touch or ever know in a true form.
Oh, so you're not getting any information
Through my
your
senses.
senses. So you're
No.
getting it, you think you're getting it just through your mind.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you would be getting it through reason.
Yes.
Another example of that might be 1 + 1 = 2. How do you know that?
Because I know what 1 is and I know what 1 is.
Yeah.
And I know that they together will be 2.
Yeah. So you don't have to actually observe any information with your senses to know that.
Yes. Yeah. No.
Okay.
No, you don't.
And I'll just give you one more example. This is my favourite one. All triangles have 3 sides. How do you know
Yes.
that's true?
Because I know that a triangle has 3 sides. Like I can...
Because if you have the concept of a triangle in your head,
it has to have 3 sides.
it must.
Yeah.
So that's a belief that you get through reason.
Yeah.
One of the 2 basic principles on which all our beliefs rest. So Tim, what's one thing that you think is definitely true?
I have a shoulder. Well, 2 shoulders even.
Okay, I have 2 shoulders. That's a proposition that you think is definitely true?
Yes, I
Okay.
hope so.
Now, where did you get that information from?
I can tap my shoulder.
So you can
even
touch,
glance down at my shoulder.
so you can see, you can
Yeah.
touch.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So are you getting that information from the senses or from reason?
From my senses.
Absolutely. So Descartes says, whatever I have up till now accepted as most true, so in other words, whatever I think is definitely true, I seem to have got that information through the senses.
Yes.
You agree with that, right? Like when we go
Totes.
around in life, we are constantly getting information through our senses and we generally trust that that information is true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so Descartes' now focusing in on this one basic principle, the senses. He's going to get to reason a little bit later. You should now be looking at kind of the bottom of page 12, and we'll get on to page 13 pretty quickly. So now he goes into this kind of technique that he uses a lot in his writing, which is kind of like a bit of a conversation with himself, right? So he's kind of debating stuff with himself. And what he's debating is, can he actually trust the information he gets through his senses?
Yep.
So, on the one hand, he says to himself, well, from time to time, I have found that the senses deceive. So, for example, has there ever been a time when your senses have tricked you? Maybe not.
Yeah, sure. When I thought I saw something, but really it was something else.
Yeah, like people talk about it a lot with being in the desert. You know, you see an oasis, but it's actually you're hallucinating because you're so dehydrated.
Yeah.
So the senses can deceive you. And Descartes said it is prudent, which means smart. Mm-hmm. It's prudent never to trust completely those who have deceived us even once. So if my senses have tricked me before, I shouldn't trust them again. It's kind of like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yes, how wise.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, he says to himself that he should trust his senses because although they might occasionally deceive us, so I have some sight problems, and sometimes, something in the distance might look a bit different to me than what it really is. That although that might happen every now and again, that there are many of my beliefs that it would be quite impossible to be deceived about and that are clearly derived by the senses. So, for example, if Descartes would think, okay, clearly right now I'm sitting by the fire and I am here doing that. So he cannot be deceived on that point.
Yeah, so it's kind of saying, yes, the senses can deceive us, but they usually only deceive us about stuff that is in the distance or hard to perceive. Like, something a long way away, you might not be able to tell what that is. You might think it's a person when actually it's a car or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's saying, like, surely the senses would not deceive us about super obvious things, like the fact that I am sitting in this seat next to the fire. So Descartes is thinking, well, surely I can trust my senses with regard to the really important things, like the fact that I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
But then he comes back with, well, actually, maybe I cannot trust my senses, because what about madmen? And I love this part. Madmen whose brains are so damaged by the persistent vapours of melancholia that they firmly maintain that their heads are made of earthenware or that they are pumpkins. So you can imagine if you have, a serious mental illness, maybe you might be tricked into thinking that you are a pumpkin when actually you're just sitting in a chair by the fire. So can Descartes really trust that he is sitting in the chair, or could it be a hallucination?
Okay. But he then responds to himself and thinks, well, hang on, I'm not crazy though, so surely I am capable of knowing that I am actually just sitting in this chair.
But Descartes comes back at himself with this line, that he cannot trust his senses because he's had the experience before when he is asleep and is having a dream. I've had this experience, I'm sure maybe you have too, where you have this really intense dream where you're dreaming something crazy and you feel like it's real. You feel like it's completely real. And then you wake up and realise it was all in your head. So how does he know that actually what's happening right now is not just a dream?
Yeah.
He could be tricking himself.
Yeah. But then he responds to himself again by saying that, but hang on, the distinctiveness of what you feel when you are awake is not possible at all when you're dreaming. So clearly if you're feeling something and it is so distinct, then you must be awake.
So he can trust his senses.
Yes.
But then finally he comes back at himself again and says, well, actually, I've had dreams before where it felt really distinct. It felt like I, could feel my heart beating and I could feel everything around me. It distinctly felt like it was real, but it wasn't. So how do I know that even when I'm having the most distinct experience, how do I know that's not a dream? And he comes to the conclusion, well, I can never know if it's not a dream. I could be dreaming everything right now. So basically his overall conclusion after all that is I can't trust my senses at all.
Cool. And that's this module.